Good morning and welcome. Patriot News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Monday. Yeah, we're, about a week away? A week and a day away from the election. It's Halloween, right? We got Halloween coming up later this week. We got a lot of economic data. So last week, not a lot of data. This week, got a lot of data. Jobs. We've got the Fed's favorite inflation numbers. We also got an announcement coming from the Treasury of how much more money they're going to need to borrow. They call it refunding. That's kind of a cute little word to say, well, the checkbook's empty, so we've got to borrow some more money. It's one of those ways they can, make things appear better for a little while until the checkbook is empty. That is all coming out this week, but the year of chaos marches on. This is how crazy it is. The Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals, are in first place. Yeah. I've said that I don't know, almost no times in my life. But, yeah, right now, of course, they're only 4-4. But, hey, we'll take it. That never happened. So, yeah, thinking of things that never happened, a lot of that happening this year. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. We had record heat this weekend, but starting tomorrow, I love it because it's going to be 70, right? 70. Yeah, we're going to be long pants. People are going to get the coats out, right? It'll be absolutely freezing here in the Valley of the Sun. And let me tell you, it was a hot one this year. There's no doubt about it. We are ready for it. But Jason, it's going to be very interesting. We saw Israel's retaliation. I'm going to say this right now. I got a bone to pick. Right? You cannot come out and make all these crazy statements. We're going to show the world what's going to happen to you if you do this to Israel. And by all accounts, a pretty big nothing burger. We waited weeks, right? Oh my, the build-up, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, listen. You have told millions of people to get out and taken cities and literally turn them into piles of rubble. You have killed all of these people from Hamas to Hezbollah, all these leaders, and of course the head of the steak, as they call it, the Iranians, a big fat nothing burger. And it's interesting. Here's the good news about it. Oil is down, but really not much anything else. You know what? Gold was going to be down, and then somebody actually figured out, oh, wait a minute. The Treasury's going to borrow a bunch of money. We are somewhere, let's say in the next 10 to 14 days, we'll have surpassed $36 trillion. Before the end of the year, we're going to close in on 37. By whoever wins next week, well, if we even know next week, by Inauguration Day, it's going to be over $37 trillion, and the 10-year note, right, continuing to head higher. But, Jason, I got to say this. That was a bit, I don't know, I'll call it a nothing burger. They didn't hit any oil. They didn't hit any nuclear. If you don't cut off the money, how's anything going to change? But apparently the Biden administration got with the Israelis and said, hey, let's let cooler heads prevail. It's okay if you destroy Gaza. It's okay if you destroy Lebanon. It's okay if you destroy people, but don't destroy the Iranians.
It looks like this is what they were able to negotiate to attack over the weekend. That's what it looks like. It was very precision. They did brag that they hit a lot of stuff they really wanted to hit, but I don't know. Let's see what happens. Doesn't it seem like Israel and Iran don't seem to be all that really that angry? There's rhetoric, but there's not a lot of anger. What happened to the anger these countries used to have towards each other? They did this stuff 20 years ago. There would be all-out war. So it's definitely feels like sales markets and negotiations are going on, Joe.
Yes, just enough to keep the GDP going. Drop enough bombs so you got to get reloaded. Speaking of bombs, apparently Brazil and Venezuela are not happy with each other. Venezuela apparently was getting ready to join BRICS. Apparently this was going to be one of the countries that was going to be allowed into BRICS, and they got vetoed by Brazil. So how the BRICS thing works, you have to have the founding members, Brazil, India, China, Russia, South Africa, all five have to agree for you to get in. Apparently, Venezuela had the votes, with the exception of Brazil. They even accused, remember now, the Brazilian president couldn't make it because he had a head injury, he fell, and this and that. This morning, Venezuela's like, he was faking it. He didn't want to show up because he didn't want to get pressured into allowing them into BRICS. So we do know this. One country we know that isn't going to be in the BRICS system, Venezuela.
Sounds like somebody gave a big bag of money to Brazil to keep them out. That's what it'll say.
Yeah,
I think that's what that
sounds,
is.
Right? Hey, that's where I was kind of going, what do you think? I mean, honestly, I wonder what it cost us, because I do think we were involved to get Brazil to deny Venezuela entry into BRICS. We were wondering about Venezuela. Remember, we talked about it. We were wondering what's. Because you would think that would fit right in. They're on the bad guy bus. Well, there you go. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason, we're going to be back. 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason on this Monday. A quick look in at the markets here. The Dow up 350. The S&P's up 28. The Nasdaq's up 100. The 10-year note continuing to rise here, 4.27. We're expecting probably late today, at least an indication from the Treasury how much money they're going to need to borrow, and then we'll get something official on Wednesday, exactly how they're going to do it. And again, this is something where seems like now, depending on how the calendar falls, twice a year, we got to have these refundings, right? We got to have, we're going to add a quick $120, $130, $140 billion. You guys should do that twice a year, right? You're adding, it's just a $250 billion, big deal. Right now, oil is down $3.75. Gold is flat. Well, it depends on where you look. I'll say that gold's down $5. $27.43. Silver is higher, $33.80. By the way, palladium has hit $1,200. Platinum's up $13. Of course, news on the wanting Russia to have their palladium supplies banned, right? And they're 40% of the market. We'll see how all of these things play out. But again, I think this highlights how difficult it is to really understand what's happening and the size and the scope of what's happening in the world. Like after this, we're going to talk about the UK. They're going to change the definition of debt. Not kidding. So they can borrow even more money and make it appear as if they're not. Yeah, again, the left pocket, right pocket, right? These are the tricks that they play. I saw a number today now. Unrealized losses from commercial real estates on the banks now up to $750 billion. This debt avalanche, we all know. It's getting ready to come crashing down. We keep telling you about being diversified. You got to have more gold, more silver than ever before. Get more diversified. You're sitting on big IRAs and things like that. Check out our friends at Y Refi, up to 10.25% fixed rates of return. I mean, think about, we said it last week. Remember Goldman Sachs says, well, the next 10 years, the stock market's going to look a lot different. Well, how different? Well, they said, well, you're probably only going to get 3% a year. I don't know if we'll get that. I really don't. So for 10 years, you get 3% a year for 10 years. Heck, if you did Y refi, if you went 5 years twice, you did 10 years with Y refi, you would get over 100%, more than doubling of your money. Check them out, investyrefi.com. And you're like, well, why? Because it's not correlated to the stock market. It doesn't care about how much money the Treasury's got to borrow. It doesn't care about the definition of debt or what Israel did or didn't do, North Korean troops, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. It doesn't care. If you got $50,000 or more, check these guys out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com. Or just call them at 888-YREFI24, 888-973-3924. News out of the UK today. So we need to borrow more money. At the same time, the UK, see, they don't have the world's reserve currency. Of course, we're starting to not have it either. But they've decided that they need to borrow more money. So here's what they're going to do. First, they are going to pass a rule that requires the Treasury of the UK to pay for day-to-day spending out of taxes. Now, think about that. Hey, we're going to pay for the day-to-day. I don't know. What does that mean, day-to-day? Right? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that what they're doing now? Right? Day-to-day stuff out of taxes, right? Of course, the problem is you're not collecting enough taxes to pay for all the stuff. Well, apparently they have different definitions now. There are certain things that they're going to say are day-to-day expenses, and then there's certain things they're going to say, well, these aren't day-to-day. And they used infrastructure. See, that's not a day-to-day thing. We're going to fix, I don't know, some roads. We're going to build a new port or something like this, right? So that's not considered day-to-day. Of course, you could argue, well, aren't you doing that all the time anyway? But neither here nor there. They still don't have enough money to pay for their quote-unquote day-to-day stuff. So they're going to raise taxes. They're going to have employers pay more in insurance and capital gains, inheritance taxes, all that stuff. And then they're going to create another rule that simply says that we're going to take these non-day-to-day stuff and essentially we're going to throw them on the debt 5 years from now. We're not going to do it right now. We're going to do it 5 years from now. So that way, Jason, they can add. Now, here's how the difference in countries are. How much money is that going to allow them to borrow extra? About $90 billion. $90 billion. Remember last week that our debt went up $90 billion in a day. The Treasury is going to come out later today and tell us they need to borrow restock the checkbook by hundreds of billions of dollars in a single day. But apparently now the new banking law in England is going to be, well, this special stuff, we're just going to put it on the debt 5 years from now instead of right now, Jason. We're just going to change the definition. It'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong?
Where does the money go while it's waiting to be added?
I don't know. That's what I don't know.
Is there a money limbo that they're going to create at the new tool in the toolbox? But money limbo. We have this limbo place. We'll add it there so it won't go on to the debt necessarily, and then we don't have to. That's brilliant. So then the citizens won't have to pay the interest on the debt. But I wonder if it's like college forgiveness. The interest still builds up while it's in limbo. So when they add it, it's an enormous hit all at once. Maybe waiting for the next president to be elected or something like that. How's that?
Right. Right.
Whatever idea comes into their head.
How about this? We talked about Brazil denying Venezuela into BRICS. Over the weekend, South Africa has requested that Taiwan move its official representation offices out of the capital. And, of course, now, right, South Africa friends with China. U.S. lawmakers now are condemning the decision and calling for consequences. So this is why BRICS is where it is. These guys haven't figured it out. They're talking on, a bunch of these senators got on social media that the United States should not tolerate this behavior from South Africa. What is it our business? What is it our business? It's not like South Africa said, hey, we want you out of the country. They just said, hey, you can't be in the capital anymore. You're relegated to, whatever city they want to move them to. But, Jason, I think this is another one of these things. We're trying to weaponize. And again, the United States Congress rejects South Africa's pathetic attempt to bully our dear friend Taiwan out of the capital. And I'm just like, okay, so we can bully, right? But nobody else can, right, Jason? This is the problem. Have they not figured out what's going to happen? And unfortunately for us, we are going to pay a very dear price for this. This is the reason there's BRICS right here. This is it. Right? So what? Right? And what you think? Oh my God, this is going to be devastating for Taiwan because they had to move. Right? It doesn't really change anything. No, but instead we've got to punish them, Jason.
Yeah, there is some things kind of changing, right? The way the world's working geopolitically, like the Brazil Venezuelan thing, and with the BRICS, it's almost like America is probably figuring it out. Maybe that they're becoming vilified for all of the campaigns they've done over the decades. So maybe they let the other countries do it for a change. Maybe hey, if America needs to bully some country for not paying whatever or not doing what they want, maybe they have some other country do it for them, right? You have Brazil. We don't want people thinking we're bullying Venezuela. Why don't you do it, and we'll just we'll hand you the funds you need to do so. maybe that's the world we're moving into, Joe.
We need to be better at bullying, is what you're saying. That's what I hear you saying.
What it is.
We need to be better.
Sophisticated.
Right, yes, right? We need to figure out how to blame somebody else and say, well, gosh, it's not us. We're not doing it. God, we feel bad for you, South Africa. Man, that really sucks. But, what can we do? What can we do? Britain's upset or, I don't know, blah, 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 country's upset. It's not us, right? I think that's, you know what? That's a really good idea. I don't know if it'll work, but we should definitely try to figure out how to bully better. Right? I mean, they have that campaign in the schools, right? Oh, my God, don't bully, don't be a bully. And yet, right? I mean, isn't that what we do?
America has always been good at backing some rebels against the regime that, the bankers don't want in power. But this would be a little different because this would be backing smaller countries or countries against other countries, right? Well, we're out of. We're not doing anything. It's kind of like lobbying for one country to bully for you. It's right. It'd be a step up. I guess. I mean, maybe that's just because how big the numbers are now. The numbers are so huge now. You don't have to back a bunch of rebels. You can actually back an entire nation against another one, and then you're no longer blamed for the bullying. You can have.
I guess you know what, right? Maybe is that like kind of the Iran-Contra thing? I don't know. Maybe that's not a great idea. I don't know. I'm not sure. How about we just don't do it? How about it's like, well, gosh, it doesn't affect us in any way. I mean, I don't know. It's not like is South Africa some powerhouse that I don't know about? Right? Are they?
They got a lot of commodities down there, don't they?
They
got a lot of commodities.
I guess that.
Yeah, they hold a lot of weight in commodities. That's why they're in the BRICS to begin with. So I think South Africa's leader, he was shaming Israel and he was going off over there at the BRICS meeting. So they're throwing their weight around there, the South African leadership.
Well, I don't know. Apparently I don't know anything. Apparently this is a big deal. And they're going to upset the apple cart by having Taiwan move its, let's call it their embassy, for lack of a better term, to a different location inside of South Africa. But, I guess the interesting thing is in 1970, only about 1% of all U.S. counties reported that government transfers made up more than 25% of income in their county. So 1970, right? This is right before we, quote unquote, closed the gold window, which just essentially, it really was a technical default. Couldn't trade treasuries for gold anymore. What's happened since then? We'll update. 800-951-0592, and we're starting to really understand how big government has gotten. In 1970, so the year I was born, only 1% of all U.S. counties said that government transfers. So this is going to be any form of government assistance, right? Whether that be food stamps, housing assistance, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, right? Because all those are taxes, just so you know. People don't like that when you actually tell them that, right? No, I paid in. I deserve. No, you just paid taxes. You just paid taxes. As of 2022, so about 50 years later, more than 25% of all the counties in the United States reported dependence at greater than that level. And it's astonishing when you really think about other things that have gone on. Pension solvency for the states. Right now, total unfunded pension liabilities, $1.6 trillion. Right? So you think about, okay, the huge percentage of the counties in the United States have over 25% of all the money that comes in coming from the federal government. They said that the interest payment on the U.S. debt, right, we know went from $30 billion in 1970, $30 billion. Today, Jason, it's over $1 trillion in interest payments. And the whole, I guess, environment for the next 5 to 10 years, they're expecting the number of counties to receive at least 25% of, I guess, let's call it income, wealth, whatever you want to call it, is going to be from government handouts versus any type of actual productivity. This is how you go broke very quietly, right? How do you cover up the falling standard of living? Well, the government's just shoveling out money everywhere.
Yeah, that's the only thing they've got left, Joe. We talk about the inflation coming back and getting worse, and it really hasn't gone anywhere, hasn't it? It's pretty bad still. They're gonna have to pay a budget here in a few months, and I believe just looking at the numbers, it's going to get more and more and more severe. It really does look like the plan for the Fed is to try to inflate their way out of the mess they're in, because the debt to GDP has not been this bad since World War II, right, Joe? They got out of that, right, Joe? And then their system was in place, and slowly but surely They went on a rate hiking cycle slowly but surely over about 30 to 40 years, and they inflated their way out of the debt to GDP, which is what the federal government can't pay. We're not going to pay as a nation the interest on the debt. It's going to become the number one line item on the budget. And so they're going to spend, and they're going to inflate, and we're going to be, I think, in a rate hiking cycle. Because, look, the Fed dropped a half point, but mortgages went up. Interest rates went up, and I think that's going to continue to happen, Joe. And I thought the Fed might go another 50 basis points down this next meeting, but do they even dare to cut? I guess are they going to be defiant? That's we're going to find out if they're going to be defiant.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Yeah, that is going to be an interesting thing. Look at the bond market today, right? We're going even higher, and of course. We'll find out. We'll talk about tomorrow or Wednesday how much more borrowing needs to go on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, these unrealized losses. One of the things we talked a lot about Warren Buffett, right? Why is he selling so much Bank of America stock? He just can't unload it fast enough. Well, according to the latest numbers, unrealized losses are piling up at the nation's banks and now has hit $750 billion. But it gets worse. Banks have been able to carry these balances because of the reforms instituted in 2008. See, it's so funny. All of this stuff that they told us was to help the banks really allowed them to be even worse. Because now they're able to make up, well, we don't have to report it. We're just going to hold on to it, and we'll carry it to term, or we can, do some other slick maneuvers, and we got these stress tests and all this other stuff. Bank of America had to admit it lost $85 billion in its bond portfolio this year alone. They have taken a $116 billion hit in this portfolio for the last 3 years, but they said Bank of America's not alone. Of the 1,027 banks that have assets over $1 billion. So think about, we know the big banks, right? But there's not that many of them. People don't think, when we say, hey, we've got 4,000 banks, 3,000 of them don't even have $1 billion of assets. They're tiny. They can be gone in a blink of an eye. But they said of those, 47 of them have liabilities and losses on their books that are more than 50% of the bank's capital equity at this moment. In other words, if they had to take the losses, Jason, they'd be out of money. Right? They're essentially saying, hey, we would have to be out of money. If the worst scenario came to pass, right, they're saying that the losses would be cascading. So, and again, you got to remember, 47 of them have it at over 50%. Right? But when you say, okay, well, what about, 30%? Well, now you're almost talking all of them. Right? I mean, this is the problem, and it's getting worse. And they're saying that these unrealized losses are starting to become something very, very big because all of these banks, and again, they have no other choice. It's either got to put them on like Bank of America. Okay, we lost $85 billion, but how much did they really lose, right? How much more is there out there on their books? And I know this. I know Warren Buffett knows that answer, right? And guess what he said? Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, don't worry. What could possibly go wrong? They changed the rules so they could do this. See, don't you feel better? It's Radio News Hour. (800-951-0592) Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. and as the election's a week away, some of these banks and analysts at these banks decided that they wanted to figure out where gold would be depending on who the president is going to be. And they're essentially doing this from 2025, right? So Inauguration Day to 2029. And it was kind of interesting because they said their base $3,730, right? That's the baseline. They're like, okay, that's probably as low as it's going to be. If Kamala Harris is president, they up it to $3,940. And then they had a Donald Trump presidency. And this is the thing I think that I kind of thought would be the opposite, right? That the Trump presidency would be lower gold, Harris would be higher gold. They say no. 4,040, so about the same. Trump, Harris, about the same. 3,940 at $100 for Trump, 4,040. If Trump doesn't do tariffs, $4,150 is their baseline. So kind of interesting assumptions. You know, the part that was interesting was nobody in there was saying that gold prices were going to be lower. It was just a matter of how high that they were going to be, and pretty much, essentially saying, hey, we're going to have $4,000 gold in 2029. And I think that's, if it's only 4,000, I actually think that would mean that we've done somewhat of a good job in controlling the debt, because I think it'll be a lot higher than that. But it's interesting how these banks viewed the two. Very similar, but yet Trump will have higher gold prices. And, oh, by the way, if he doesn't do the tariffs, it'll be even higher. Which would make wouldn't you think the opposite? Well, gosh, if he did tariffs, right, it's supposed to cause inflation. Wouldn't that lead to higher gold prices? Apparently they said no.
And that's the 2029 forecast price?
Yes.
And gold only at $4,000? What kind of
well, you got to remember, these are banks. These are banks. Right? This isn't, right? These are people that normally, listen, I've seen these reports come out before, and they've always, gold's going to be lower. These are the same people that told you gold was going to be below $2,000 this year. And, of course, it's almost $3,000.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe anything those people are pushing. I mean, that's just by 2% inflation, gold will probably be $4,000 by 2029. By 2029, Joe, except for gold spike in 2011, gold's been, doing what inflation's doing, going up. And so no, I get it. They're trying to tell you that it doesn't really matter who gets elected. Gold's going up, but that is a saggingly low number when gold could be $4,000 next year. I'm not saying it is, but gold could be $4,000 next year. I mean, there's a lot of nervous Nellies out there, especially when it comes to war. I mean, I always forget the guy. I'm gonna have to get this clip from this guy, but he basically says that gold is war. War is gold. And he said, look, it doesn't matter if there's actually war going on. He's like, what is the sentiment? And he talks about all of the situations across the world. He's like, none of these sound like things that are going to de-escalate. It's all escalation. And he's like, all that's going to happen is gold, gold, gold. He made this one point. It's one point that's really good. You have two countries at war, right? Okay? And one country is losing. What countries are going to do business with the losing country? Because they know that country could get erased, right, by losing the war. If that country needs to buy more tanks, are you going to take their currency when they're losing the war? But you will take that country's gold if they're losing the war. And he said that's why gold is war. War is gold. And he said, look, all you have to do is just go by the sentiment, world sentiment. Is these geopolitical situations cooling off, or are they just getting worse? Joe, Taiwan, Middle East, Ukraine, and everywhere else. You talk about Venezuela, Brazil, stuff like Pakistan and India. These things aren't getting better. These things are getting worse. And he says this is why he's going to be buying and buying and buying gold, because until things cool off, losing countries need to have gold in a war because they won't be able to buy more tanks.
Yeah, and it's something where it's an economic thing that's happening globally. Look at the UK. Hey, we got to change the way we do debt because we need to borrow more. Right? We got to figure out a way to borrow more, but make it so it doesn't look like we're borrowing more. Right? Look at our banks. Well, we got tons of losses, but guess what? See, one of the things that we didn't tell you about after the '08 crash, we just made it easier for these banks to not have to report them. Isn't that great? Yeah, it's off balance. I mean, if we don't count it, right, then it's fine. It'll be fine. And hopefully the hope is if we wait long enough, it comes back. But it doesn't look like it's coming back this time around, does it? That's the problem. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And apparently Warren Buffett's like, time to wait is over. These banks are out of time. Patriot Radio News Hour. (800-951-0592). Joe and Jason wrapping up this Monday. Pretty really a good day in the metals market, all things considered, with the nothing burger out of Israel and oil being down almost $4. You got silver's higher. You got gold just hanging out here, down $5, $27.43. Today we got a limited special. I've got 50 Mint State 62 $20 St. Gaudens at no premium, $29.25. So the same price as a regular circulated $20 Saint. You get it graded and encapsulated. PCGS NGC $20 Mint State 62 St. Gaudens, $2,925. Jason, it's just getting hard to get an ounce of gold for under $300. I mean, you think about it, at $27.50, at 10%, right? You're over $3,000. I mean, you're just over $3,000. I mean, you're at $3,025. So down here, getting graded gold, $29.25 at 800-951-0592. It's just a great opportunity. Like I said, I think premiums are going to jump up. By the way, really quickly, quarter-ounce gold eagles, half-ounce gold eagles gone. Just disappeared on Friday. We're starting to see some demand pick up here, and I think once this election comes to an end, Jason, we're probably going to see a big jump in the premiums, which makes makes it harder to buy closer to spot. Right now, you're able to do it at a really good price here, and this is a great opportunity. $2,925 for Mint State 62 Saints, Jason.
Yeah, if gold were to stop going up like it's been doing all year and just started to go sideways, and the demand goes up, the premiums could push gold $200 to $300 an ounce. We could be selling $20 liberties for $3,100 or $3,200 just by premium demand if that returns. And that's the way it works, right, Joe? There's there's a lot of sellers right now. There's a lot of people selling. The markets are not good. People losing their jobs. They sell their savings off in gold and silver to make ends meet. But at some point that'll stop, right, Joe? And when that stops, there'll be less product, and then the premiums will then start to rise, and they can rise dramatically, especially if something blows up in the world, some emergency pops up. Suddenly gold could go up in price, and the premiums can double that rise. So for all you guys out there thinking, it's so low, it's a record high, I don't want to jump in on record highs. I've always been told not to jump in on record highs. Well, it's going to keep going. It will keep going, and there's no reason for it to stop right now. If there was some interesting news out there about things going a certain direction, that we might see some things settle. But I mean, gold was less than $2,000, a year ago. Less than $2,000 a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, you think about where gold was a year ago. It's crazy to think about it, but it was really, I think, right at 2,000. Right, this was the day. Right around this day, gold finally got to 2,000. But it was in the hot, 1,900 and change at the end of 2023. So you can kind of see, there's been a big shift in the world and how the world sees debt. Be your own central bank here. Get it put away. Jason and I, we're coming right back.